The colony transport ship Eternal Dawn moved slowly through the dark space between stars. It was an old ship built for cargo, not comfort. The metal walls were cold. The lights flickered sometimes, but for the 3,000 people inside it was hope. It was escape. It was the only way out of a dying world. Sat in the corner of the crowded sleeping hall with her two daughters pressed close to her body. Was on her left, Bora on her right. They were twins, 8 years old, with the same round faces and curious eyes. They looked so much like their father that sometimes it hurt to look at them. Their father had died 2 years ago when the mines collapsed on Seven. After that, there was nothing left for them on that cold, broken world. The air was getting thin. The food was running out. The company that owned the colony had abandoned them. So when the transport ship came offering passage to the inner systems, sold everything she had for 3 tickets. Now they were 7 days into a 14-day journey and allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, are we going to have a real house with windows?" Smiled and touched her daughter's hair. "Yes, baby, a real house with windows and a garden and sunlight every day." Bora, the quieter of the twins, looked up with serious eyes. "Will there be other children?" "So many children," promised. "You'll have friends, you'll go to school, everything will be different." The girls smiled and closed their eyes, dreaming of a future they had never known. Held them and stared at the metal ceiling, silently praying to anyone who might listen. "Just let us get there. Just let us arrive safely. Please." But the universe was not listening that night. The first sign of trouble was a deep vibration that moved through the floor. Felt it in her bones before she heard anything. Then came the alarm, a high screaming sound that filled every corridor of the ship. Red lights began to flash. People started to panic. Mothers grabbed children. Men shouted questions that no one could answer. The sleeping hall became chaos. Pulled her daughters to their feet and pushed them toward the wall. "Stay close to me. Don't let go of my hands. Do you understand?" Nodded, her face pale with fear. Bora was already crying, silent tears running down her cheeks. The ship shook again, harder this time. Through the small window in the door could see people running in the corridor. Then the intercom crackled with the captain's voice, and everything went quiet. "This is Captain Park. We have been intercepted by a warship. They are demanding we surrender. I have no choice but to comply. All passengers remain calm. Do not resist. I repeat, do not resist." The silence that followed was worse than the alarm. Everyone knew about Everyone had heard the stories. They were slavers, pirates who moved through the outer systems taking whatever they wanted. They saw other species not as people but as property, cargo to be bought and sold. Felt her heart stop. She looked down at her daughters, at their innocent faces, and something inside her broke. No, not them, anyone but them. The next hour was the longest of her life. Soldiers boarded the ship. They were tall creatures, almost 2 meters, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces had no expression, just black eyes that looked at humans the way humans looked at insects. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The soldiers moved through the ship section by section, herding all the passengers into the main cargo hold. 3,000 people, packed together like animals. Kept her daughters in front of her, shielding them with her body. Around her, she could hear people crying, praying, begging. Then the commander arrived. His name was, though would not learn this until later. He was larger than the other soldiers, with a scar running across his face and ornaments of bone hanging from his uniform. He stood on a platform above the crowd and looked down at them with cold amusement. "Humans," he said, his voice amplified by a device on his throat. "You are now property of the Trade Consortium. You will be transported to processing stations where you will be assigned work duties. Those who cooperate will be treated fairly. Those who resist will be punished." A man near the front shouted something, some defiance that could not hear clearly. 2 soldiers grabbed him and dragged him away. No one else spoke after that. Continued. There is one matter to address. Children under the age of 10 are inefficient for labor purposes. They consume resources but produce nothing. Therefore, they will be separated and disposed of. The word hung in the air like poison. Disposed. A sound rose from the crowd, a sound of pure human anguish. Parents grabbed their children. People screamed. The soldiers raised their weapons and the screaming turned to sobbing. Could not breathe. She looked down at and Bora, at their small hands holding hers, at their eyes looking up at her with complete trust. They did not fully understand what was happening. They only knew that their mother was there, and that meant they were safe. But she could not keep them safe, not from this. The soldiers began moving through the crowd, pulling children away from their parents. The sounds that filled the cargo hold were sounds that would haunt for the rest of her life. Fathers fighting and being beaten down, mothers begging on their knees, children crying for parents they would never see again. When the soldier reached, he looked at the twins with those empty black eyes. These too, come. Something rose up inside, something beyond fear, beyond reason. It was the primal force that exists in every mother, the fire that burns when her children are threatened. She stepped in front of her daughters, spreading her arms wide to block them from view. No. The soldier paused. Perhaps he was surprised. Humans did not usually resist. Take me instead, said, her voice shaking but strong. I will work for both of them. I will work twice as hard, 3 times as hard. I will do anything you want. Please, please just let them live. The soldier did not respond. He simply raised his weapon and pointed it at her chest. But then's voice came from above. Wait. The commander had been watching. He stepped down from his platform and walked through the crowd, which parted before him like water. He stopped in front of and studied her with curious eyes. You offer yourself for your children, he said. It was not a question. Yes, anything, everything, just let them live. Made a sound that might have been laughter. Humans are strange creatures. You understand that your offer means nothing, that I have no reason to accept. Please, dropped to her knees. Her daughters began to cry, holding onto her clothes. I am begging you, have mercy, they are just children. Looked at the twins, then back at. His face showed nothing, no pity, no cruelty, just cold calculation. No, he said simply. They are cargo, and cargo that serves no purpose has no value. He gestured to the soldier. The soldier stepped forward, weapon raised. Closed her eyes and pulled her daughters into her arms. She held them as tightly as she could, feeling their small hearts beating against her chest. If this was the end, she would face it holding them. She would be their shield, even if she could not save them. She waited for the sound of the weapon. But it did not come. Instead, a voice spoke from somewhere behind her. A calm, quiet voice that somehow cut through all the noise and chaos. Wait. Had not planned to be a hero. He had never thought of himself as brave or special in any way. He was just a man, 43 years old, with rough hands and tired eyes. He had spent 20 years working in the mining colonies, fixing machines, keeping equipment running, doing the work that no one noticed until something broke. He had no wife, no children, no family waiting for him anywhere. His parents had died when he was young. He had never found love, or perhaps love had never found him. He was the kind of man that people looked past, the kind of face that no one remembered, and that had always been fine with him. When he boarded the Eternal Dawn, he had a simple plan: reach the inner systems, find work, live quietly until his body gave out. That was all, nothing more, nothing less. Now he stood in a cargo hold surrounded by 3,000 terrified humans, watching aliens decide who would live and who would die. And something inside him was changing. He had seen a lot of suffering in his life. The mining colonies were hard places. People got hurt. People died. You learned to look away, to focus on your own survival, because if you let yourself feel too much, the weight of it would crush you. But this was different. He watched the soldiers pull children from their parents. He heard the screaming, the begging, the sounds of hearts breaking. He saw fathers try to fight and get beaten to the ground. He saw mothers offer themselves, offer anything and be ignored. And then he saw her. A woman, not young but not old, with two small girls pressed against her body. She was on her knees before the commander, begging for her children's lives. She offered herself in their place. She offered everything she had. The commander refused. The soldier raised his weapon. And the woman did not run. She did not try to save herself. She pulled her daughters into her arms and held them, ready to die with them because she could not live without them. Felt something stir in his chest, something he had buried long ago. He thought about his own mother, who had died protecting him during a factory accident when he was 7 years old. She had pushed him out of the way of falling equipment and been crushed beneath it. He still remembered her face, still remembered her last words. Run, live. He had lived, but he had never stopped feeling the weight of that sacrifice. Now, watching hold her children, he saw his mother again. He saw every mother who had ever loved a child more than herself. He saw the kind of love, the kind that asks for nothing, the kind that gives everything. And he could not look away. The soldier's weapon was humming, ready to fire. In a few seconds it would all be over. 3 lives ended, a mother and 2 daughters, and the universe would not even notice. Unless someone did something. Did not make a conscious decision. His body moved before his mind could stop it. He pushed through the crowd, past the frightened people who were too afraid to move, past the soldiers who did not see him as a threat. He stepped forward into the space between the weapon and the woman. Wait. His voice was calm. He did not know how. Inside, his heart was beating so hard he thought it might burst, but his voice was steady. Everyone turned to look at him. The soldier, the commander, the woman on the ground. 3,000 pairs of eyes, all focused on one unremarkable man who had decided to speak. The commander looked at him with something like curiosity. Another human who wishes to bargain. Yes, kept his hands visible, open and empty, but I have something actually valuable to offer. Made that strange sound again, the one that might have been laughter. And what could you possibly have that I would want? I'm a Class 4 certified engineer, said. Mechanical and electrical systems. I have worked on mining equipment, transport ships, power generators, and weapons systems. I can repair almost anything. I can improve your ship's efficiency by at least 30%, maybe more. The words came out smoothly, as if he had practiced them 100 times. But the truth was, he was making it up as he went. He had no plan. He only knew that he needed to say something, anything, to make the commander stop and think. Studied him with those black eyes. Around them the cargo hold had gone silent. Everyone was watching. A Class 4 engineer repeated. That is interesting, but why should I believe you? Reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out a worn card. His certification. He held it up for the commander to see. Check the records. I spent 8 years at 7 mining station. Before that, 5 years on the cargo fleet out of Terra Nova. I know ships like this one. I know older ships, newer ships. I can keep your equipment running twice as long as your current crew. Took the card and examined it. One of his 4 hands tapped something on a device attached to his belt. A moment later, information appeared on a screen. The commander read it, his expression unreadable. The records confirm what you say, admitted. You are indeed a certified engineer with significant experience. He handed the card back. But I still do not understand. What do you want in exchange? Pointed at and her daughters. Them, release them at the next station, let them go free. A murmur ran through the crowd. Even some of the soldiers exchanged glances. You would trade your freedom for strangers? Asked. For a woman and 2 children you do not even know. Yes. Why? It was a simple question. The answer was not. looked at who was staring at him with wide, confused eyes. Her daughters were clinging to her, their faces wet with tears. They were strangers to him. He had never spoken to them before. He did not even know their names. But he knew what it felt like to lose a mother. He knew the weight of surviving when someone else died for you. And he knew that if he walked away now, if he let this happen, he would carry those three faces with him for the rest of his life. Because she was willing to die for them, said quietly, and someone should make sure that means something. Was silent for a long moment. The cargo hold was so quiet that could hear his own heartbeat. Then the commander spoke. You are a strange creature, human. I do not understand your reasoning, it seems. Inefficient, illogical. Maybe it is. You will spend the rest of your life in service. You will work until your body fails. You will never see your again. You understand this. I understand. Turned to look at and her daughters. He seemed to be calculating, weighing the value of 3 useless lives against 1 useful one. Finally, he nodded. Very well. The woman and the children will be released at the next station. You belong to us now. 2 soldiers stepped forward and grabbed his arms. They were not gentle, but he did not resist. Screamed, no, no, you can't. I don't even know you. Why are you doing this? Looked at her one last time. She was crying, reaching toward him, trying to understand. Her daughters were holding onto her, confused and frightened. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that would explain everything. But there were no words for this. There was only the simple truth. Take care of them, he said. That's enough. The soldiers pulled him away. He did not look back. If he looked back, he might lose his courage. He might beg them to stop, to choose someone else to let him go. But there was no one else. There was only him, and he had made his choice. As they led him through the corridors toward the ship, allowed himself one small thought, one quiet comfort. His mother had given her life so he could live. For 36 years, he had wondered what to do with that gift. Now, finally, he knew. He would pass it on. The soldiers moved quickly after the deal was made. They separated from the other passengers and led him toward the docking tube that connected the 2 ships. His hands were bound with metal restraints that were cold and tight. His heart was pounding, but he kept walking. Behind him, he could hear screaming his name, even though she did not know his name. She was screaming, wait, stop, please. And her voice was breaking with grief and confusion and something that sounded almost like anger. Why was she angry? He had saved her children. He had given her the only gift he had left to give. Why did she sound so hurt? He did not understand. But then, he had never been good at understanding people. The docking tube was dark and narrow. The ship waited at the other end, a massive warship built for violence. As walked through the tube, he looked back one last time through a small window. He could see the cargo hold of the eternal dawn, the crowd of frightened humans, the flash of face as she searched for him. Their eyes met for just a moment. Even through the distance and the glass, he could see her crying. Then the soldiers pushed him forward, and she was gone. The ship was nothing like the old transport. Where the eternal dawn was warm and worn, this ship was cold and sharp. The walls were made of black metal that seemed to absorb light. The air smelled strange, like chemicals and something else, something organic that did not want to think about. They took him to a processing room where with medical instruments examined him. The creature poked and prodded his body, tested his reflexes, scanned his organs. It made notes on a device, speaking in a language did not understand. Finally, it turned to the soldiers and said something in. The soldiers nodded and led to a small cell. The cell was barely larger than a closet. There was a thin mat on the floor and nothing else. No window, no furniture, no light except for a dim glow from the ceiling. They pushed him inside and closed the door and was alone. He sat down on the mat and stared at the wall. His hands were still shaking. His mind was still racing. What had he done? He had traded his life for 3 strangers. He had given up everything, his future, his freedom, his chance at a peaceful death, for a woman and 2 children whose names he did not even know. In a few hours, the eternal dawn would continue its journey, and her daughters would reach the inner systems. They would have their house with windows. They would have their garden and their sunlight and their new beginning. And he would be here, working until his body failed, dying alone in some alien mining colony or factory or worse. Was it worth it? He thought about his face when she begged for her children. He thought about the twins, their small hands, their frightened eyes. He thought about his mother, so many years ago, pushing him out of the way. Yes, it was worth it. He lay down on the mat and closed his eyes. He did not sleep, but he rested. He would need his strength for what was coming. Meanwhile, on the eternal dawn, sat in the corner of the cargo hold with her daughters in her arms. The soldiers had left, taking only a few other prisoners who had been selected for their skills. The rest of the passengers were safe, at least for now. The ship would continue to the inner systems as promised. But could not feel grateful. She could not feel relieved. She could only feel the crushing weight of what had happened. A stranger had saved them. A man she had never seen before, had never spoken to, had walked up to death itself and said, "Take me instead." And now he was gone. Pulled at her sleeve. "Mom, who was that man?" "I don't know, baby." "Why did he help us?" Opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. She did not know. She could not explain it. It made no sense. People did not sacrifice themselves for strangers. People did not give up everything for people they had never met. And yet he had. Bora, the quieter twin, was staring at the floor. Her eyes were distant, thinking. "He looked sad," she said softly. Remembered his face. She tried to recall every detail, every line and shadow. He had looked tired, she thought, old beyond his years. There had been something in his eyes, something heavy, like a man carrying a weight he could never put down. "Yes," she agreed, "he did look sad." "Do you think he's going to be okay?" It was an impossible question. Knew the answer, knew it with terrible certainty. They did not treat their slaves well. Life expectancy in their labor camps was measured in years, sometimes months. The man who had saved them was almost certainly walking toward his death. But she could not say that to her daughters. "I hope so," she said instead. "I really hope so." Hours passed. The eternal dawn continued its journey. The passengers slowly calmed down, the terror of the encounter fading into a dull numbness. People started talking again, sharing food, comforting each other. Did not join them. She sat alone with her thoughts, replaying the moment over and over in her mind. She remembered kneeling before the commander. She remembered the weapon pointed at her children. She remembered accepting death, accepting that she would hold her daughters as they all died together. And then his voice, that calm, quiet voice. Wait. Who was he? Where had he come from? What kind of man walked into certain death for people he did not know? An old woman sat down next to her. She was thin and white-haired, with kind eyes that had seen too much. "You're the one," the old woman said, "the one the stranger saved." "Yes." "I knew him a little, not well. We talked sometimes during the journey." His heart jumped. What was his name? His name was. She repeated it in her mind, burning it into her memory. "What else do you know about him?" The old woman shook her head sadly. "Not much. He was quiet, kept to himself. He worked in the mines on 7 for many years. No family, no friends that I knew of. He was lonely, I think. But he was kind. He fixed my breathing machine when it broke, would not accept any payment, just said it was the right thing to do." Felt tears on her cheeks. Why did he do it? Why did he save us? "I don't know." The old woman took her hand. "But I have lived a long time. I have seen many terrible things and many wonderful things, and I have learned that sometimes people are capable of more than we expect. Sometimes someone becomes more than they are because the moment requires it." She squeezed his hand gently. Your children are alive because of him. Whatever happens to him now, that truth will never change. Your daughters will grow up. They will have children of their own someday. And all of that, all of it, exists because a stranger chose to care. Wept, she wept for herself, for her daughters, for the impossible kindness that had saved them. She wept until she had no more tears. And when she finally stopped, she made a promise, a silent promise to a man she had barely known. I will remember you. I will tell your story. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. She did not know if he could hear her. She did not know if promises made to the universe mattered at all, but she made it anyway. Because that was all she could do. The story of spread like fire across dry grass. It started small. When the eternal dawn finally reached the inner systems, the passengers told their families what had happened. They told their friends, their neighbors there. They told anyone who would listen about the stranger who had given his freedom for a mother and her children. At first, it was just whispers, just another sad story from the outer rim, where terrible things happened every day. But something about this story was different. Something about it caught people's hearts and would not let go. Told the story to everyone she met. She went to news reporters, to government officials, to military leaders. She stood in front of cameras and spoke with tears in her eyes about the man named who had saved her daughters. She described his face, his voice, his last words. Take care of them, that's enough. Those words became famous. They appeared on signs, on walls, on shirts. They became a symbol of something that people needed to believe in, that humans could be good, that strangers could care about each other, that sacrifice was still possible in a cold and selfish universe. Within a month, Story had reached every human colony in the galaxy. Within 3 months, it had spread beyond humanity entirely. They were the first aliens to take notice. They were merchants, traders who traveled between star systems buying and selling goods. They had long memories and a deep respect for stories. When they heard about, they added his tale to their chronicles, their great collection of important moments from galactic history. The human engineer who traded himself for strangers, they called it. They told it in their ports and on their ships, sharing it with every species they encountered. They heard the story too. Their intelligence officers collected reports and analyzed them, trying to understand why humans everywhere were talking about one unremarkable man. They concluded that it was propaganda, an attempt to make humans seem more noble than they really were. The idea that someone would genuinely sacrifice themselves for strangers was absurd. It went against every principle of survival and evolution. Humans are weak, the High Command declared. They waste resources on sentiment and emotion. This was simply mentally defective. There is no strategic value in this story. But they were wrong. In the labor camps and factories and mines where they kept their slaves, the story spread through whispers. Prisoners from a dozen different species passed it from cell to cell, from shift to shift. They did not all understand it. Some of them came from cultures where sacrifice was unknown, where survival was the only law, but they all felt something when they heard it. Hope, a tiny flame of hope in the darkness. If a human could choose death for strangers, then maybe the universe was not as cold as it seemed. Maybe there was something worth fighting for. Maybe they were not as powerful as they pretended to be. Meanwhile, built a new life in the inner systems. She found a small house on a colony called New Soul. It had windows that looked out on green hills. It had a garden where her daughters could play. It was everything she had promised them, everything had died to give them. Except was not dead, not yet. Did not know this. She assumed he was gone, lost forever in some prison or worked to death in some distant mine. She planted a tree in her garden and called its tree. She told her daughters that the man who saved them was watching over them from somewhere far away. And Bora grew quickly, as children do. They started school. They made friends. They laughed and played and learned. But they never forgot the man on the ship. They never forgot his tired eyes and his calm voice and the way he had walked into darkness so they could walk into light. Every night before bed told them the story again. She added new details each time, small things she remembered or imagined. The way his hands had been rough from work, the way he had smiled just once when he looked at them, the way he had not looked back as the soldiers led him away. "Why did he do it, Mom?" asked one night. She was 10 now, old enough to understand more. "Because he was good," said. "Because some people carry so much love inside them that they can't keep it all for themselves. They have to give it away, even to strangers." "I want to be like that," Bora said quietly. "When I grow up, I want to help people like he helped us." Held her daughter's clothes, and felt her heart break and heal at the same time. 2 years after the incident, the story reached the Terran Military Command. Generals and admirals studied the reports, not because of the emotional content, but because of what it revealed about the slavers had taken an engineer who could repair their systems. They had shown that they valued skilled workers. They had demonstrated patterns that could be exploited. A plan began to form. The Terran military reached out to who had their own reasons to oppose trade routes were being disrupted. Merchants were being attacked. The council agreed to cooperate with a joint operation, not because they cared about one human prisoner, but because they had become too aggressive to ignore. Learned about the operation from a military officer who knocked on her door one evening. He was young and serious, with the formal manner of someone carrying important news. "We're planning a raid on Outpost 17, he said. "Intelligence suggests that prisoners from the Eternal Dawn incident may be held there. We thought you should know." His heart stopped. "You mean he might be alive?" "We don't know for certain, but there's a chance." She did not sleep that night. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, afraid to hope and unable to stop hopping. 2 years. 2 years of believing he was dead, of mourning him, of building a memorial in her heart. And now this. She thought about his face. She thought about his voice. She thought about the question that had haunted her since that day. Why did you do it? Maybe if he was still alive, she would finally get to ask him. Across the galaxy, in a cell barely large enough to stand in, was still breathing. His body had changed in 2 years. He was thinner now, his muscles worn down by constant work and insufficient food. His hands were from the machines he had been forced to repair. His back ached from sleeping on cold floors. He walked with a limp from an injury that had never healed properly. But he was alive, and every day he held on to one thought. They made it, and the girls made it to safety. His sacrifice had meant something. He did not know that his story had spread across the galaxy. He did not know that millions of beings had heard his name and been moved by his choice. He knew only the walls of his cell, the weight of his chains, the exhaustion of endless labor. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between shifts, he allowed himself to imagine. He imagined and Bora playing in a garden somewhere. He imagined them growing up, going to school, falling in love. He imagined them having children of their own someday, children who would never know the fear they had felt on that cargo ship. And he imagined, standing in the sunlight, finally at peace. That image kept him going. It gave him strength when his body wanted to give up. It reminded him why he had made his choice. Some things were worth more than one man's life. And then, one night, he heard explosions in the distance. He heard weapons fire and shouting, and the sound of metal tearing. He heard voices speaking a language he had not heard in 2 years. Human voices. The door of his cell opened. A soldier in Terran armor stood in the light, weapon raised, scanning for threats. "We've got survivors," the soldier shouted. "Medical team to Section 7. Tried to stand, but his legs would not hold him. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed. The soldier knelt beside him and removed her helmet. She was young, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "It's okay," she said. "You're going home." The rescue shuttle moved slowly through the darkness of space, carrying survivors from Outpost 17 toward the light of human territory. Inside, medical teams worked on the injured, wrapping wounds and giving medicine and speaking soft words of comfort. Lay on a bed near the window, too weak to move but too awake to sleep. He watched the stars pass by, the same stars he had looked at from his cell for 2 years. But now they were different. Now they were leading him home. A doctor checked his vital signs and frowned at the results. "You need serious medical attention," she said. "Your body has been through a lot, but you're stable. You're going to make it." Going to make it. Strange words. For 2 years he had not thought about the future. He had only thought about surviving one more day, one more hour, one more moment. The idea that there was a future, that there was something after this, felt impossible. "Where are we going?" he asked. His voice was rough from not speaking. "Terran Station Halo. It's the main refugee processing center for this sector. You'll receive medical treatment there and then—" The doctor hesitated. "Well, you're something of a famous person, mister. There are a lot of people who want to see you." Famous? The word meant nothing to him. He closed his eyes and tried to rest, but his mind would not stop spinning. The journey to Terran Station Halo took 3 days. During that time, slowly recovered enough to walk short distances. He ate real food for the first time in months. He talked to the other survivors, hearing their stories, sharing the silence that only they could understand. He learned things that shocked him. He learned that his story had spread across the galaxy. He learned that he had become a symbol, an example of human compassion that other species talked about with wonder and confusion. He learned that somewhere on a colony called New Sol, a woman named had been telling his story for 2 years. He remembered her face, her desperate eyes, her willingness to die for her children. He remembered the twins, small and frightened, holding onto their mother. Do you know if they're okay?" he asked one of the soldiers. The soldier smiled. "More than okay, they're waiting for you." Did not know what to say. He had never expected to see them again. He had never expected to see anyone again. The idea that they were waiting, that they had been waiting for 2 years, was too much to process. On the 4th day, the shuttle arrived at Terran Station Halo. The station was massive, a city floating in space. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Lights glowed from every window. It was the busiest, most alive place had ever seen. The shuttle docked at a medical bay on the outer ring. The survivors were helped off one by one, greeted by doctors and nurses and officials who processed them with gentle efficiency. Walked slowly, supported by a soldier on each side, his bad leg dragging behind him. And then he saw them. They were standing at the end of the corridor, behind a barrier that kept the crowd back from the medical area. A woman and 2 girls, older now than he remembered but unmistakable. Saw him first. She was 10 years old now, taller and stronger, with the same bright eyes she had as a child. She pointed and shouted, "Mom, Mom, it's him." Turned, their eyes met. Time stopped. Saw everything in her face. 2 years of grief, of guilt, of gratitude. 2 years of telling his story, of keeping his memory alive, of wondering if she would ever see him again. And now, finally, here he was. She ran. The barrier meant nothing. She ducked under it and ran toward him, ignoring the shouts of officials telling her to wait. Her daughters followed, first and Bora close behind, all 3 of them running as if their lives depended on it. Reached him and stopped. For a moment she just looked at him, taking in his thin frame, his scars, his tired eyes. Then she threw her arms around him and held him like she would never let go. "You're alive," she whispered. "You're alive, you're alive." Did not know what to do with his hands. He had not been held in years. He had not been touched with kindness in so long that he had forgotten what it felt like. Slowly, carefully, he raised his arms and wrapped them around her. "I'm alive," he agreed. And Bora joined the embrace. their small arms wrapping around both adults. They were crying, all of them, tears of relief and joy and something deeper, something that words could not capture. They stood there for a long time, in the middle of the corridor, surrounded by people who watched in silence. Some of those people had heard the story. Some of them were seeing the reunion they had only imagined. Some of them were wiping their own tears away. Finally pulled back and looked at his face. Her hands cupped his cheeks, her thumbs tracing the new lines and scars. "Why?" she asked. The same question she had asked 2 years ago, the question that had never been answered. "Why did you do it? You didn't know us. You didn't owe us anything. Why did you give up everything for strangers?" Thought about the question. He had thought about it many times in his cell, during the long dark nights when there was nothing to do but think. He had searched for a grand explanation, a noble reason that would make sense of what he had done. But the truth was simpler than that. "Because you loved them," he said quietly. "When I saw you ready to die for your children, I saw something beautiful, something worth protecting, and I thought that kind of love should not end in that cargo hold. It should survive. It should grow. It should become something more." He looked at Bora, at the young women they were becoming. "I had no one," he continued. "No family, no future, nothing waiting for me anywhere. My life was just time, days passing one after another meaning nothing. But your life, your family, that meant something. And if I could trade my empty days for your full ones, how could I not?" Was crying again. "But you suffered. For 2 years you suffered because of us." Yes, he did not deny it. "But every day I thought about you. I imagined your daughters growing up, playing in the sun, being happy. And that thought, it made everything worth it. It gave me a reason to keep going." He smiled, the same tired smile he had given on the cargo ship. "I don't regret it, not for a single moment." Took his hand and held it tightly. "Then come home with us. We have a house. A real house with windows and a garden, and Bora planted a tree for you. We call it tree. We talk to it sometimes when we miss you." "You missed me." "Every day," she laughed through her tears, "every single day." Looked at the three of them, this family that he had saved and that had somehow become his own. He thought about the empty years behind him and the unknown years ahead. He thought about what it meant to belong somewhere, to matter to someone. "Okay," he said softly, "take me home." They walked out of the station together, the four of them, moving slowly because of slag but moving together. People watched them pass, recognizing the faces they had seen in news reports and stories. Some of them clapped. Some of them called out words of thanks and admiration. But did not hear them. He only heard the sound of talking about her school, and Bora asking if he liked gardens, and making plans for his room in their house. He only heard the sound of family. Weeks later, when he was stronger and the world had moved on to other stories, sat in the garden of the house on New Seoul. The sun was warm on his face. The grass was soft under his bare feet, and behind him, standing tall and healthy, was Tree. Sat next to him, watching her daughters play. "The still don't understand," she said. "Their analysts wrote reports saying that your sacrifice was irrational, that it served no strategic purpose, that humans are foolish for caring about strangers." Nodded slowly. "They're not wrong, it was irrational, it didn't make sense." "Then why do I feel like they missed the point entirely?" He thought about it for a long moment. "Because they measure everything in terms of gain and loss," he said finally. "They see the universe as a competition where survival is the only goal, and from that perspective, yes, what I did was foolish." He paused, watching Chase Bora around the garden. "But humans, we see something else. We see that survival is not enough. That life without love, without connection, without sacrifice, is not really life at all. We see that the things which make us weak, our compassion, our empathy, our willingness to suffer for others, are also the things that make us strong." He turned to look at. "They will never understand that, and that's why they will lose, because they can conquer bodies but they cannot conquer hearts, and in the end, hearts are what matter. Leaned her head on his shoulder. The sun continued to shine. The children continued to play. And across the galaxy, in trade ports and diplomatic halls and secret resistance meetings, beings of 100 different species continued to tell the story of the human who had traded his life for strangers. They did not all understand it, but they all felt it. And somewhere, deep in the hearts of those who heard it, a small flame of hope began to burn. That was what humans did. They lit flames in the darkness. And those flames could never be put out.